Hello everyone, my name is Praneet and I'm a rising junior at Arrington High. My project is the gesture controlled car with an accelerometer. Now, due to my fond interest in cars, I decided to build one myself. So this up here is the chassis kit, and right underneath are the four DC motors from which these wheels spin, and connected to these motors is this motor driver, this L298 and H bridge, or the motor driver is what is essentially functioning these four motors. Now, this motor driver is connected to two things. Number one, it's connected to this ESP32, which is this little piece you see sticking out over here. Now, along with this ESP32 microcontroller, it is also connected to this Arduino Uno microcontroller. Now, let me explain to you what that means. The purpose of an ESP32 is essentially to connect with another ESP32, which is the whole purpose of this project. So we will essentially have two ESP32s, which I have currently, one on this car right here, and another one which will be on my hand to control the car with my gestures. So these two ESP32s will be connected, and they will essentially be functioning the car as I make gestures. Now, the purpose of the Arduino Uno was essentially to power up these motors as well as the motor driver. Now, we would usually use a 12 volts or higher battery pack. However, since that was not available, I decided to go with the Arduino Uno, and it is currently plugged into a wall socket. Now, that was a basic introduction of this chassis kit and this car I have. Now, in terms of wiring, wiring wasn't too difficult. However, making sure I had the right GPIO pins plugged into the corresponding enable A and enable B pins, which I'll introduce you guys to later, on the motor driver was very essential, especially in the code, since having even a number off would result in an error. So as I talked about earlier, this motor driver is probably the most important component on this chassis kit. Now, this is what this motor driver looks like right here. It's currently lighting up, which means it's getting power. Now, this motor driver essentially has two sides, right? So there's the left side and there's the right side. As you can see, there are these two wires going into the motor driver, and then on the other side, the same is happening. Now, the ports that they're going into are called output ports. There are four output ports, one corresponding to each motor. However, the way I plugged this in was I took two wires from two distinct motors from the same side and plugged them into the output. So let me show you what that looks like. So let's say this wheel and this wheel has these green wires on top of their motors. So I plugged these two green wires into the same port as you can see over here, and that's output 3. And then I did the same with the bottom ports on the motors, and then I plugged that into the same output port here, which is output 4. And then I did the exact same thing with this and this wheel over here. Now, these pins right here, these are the enable A and enable B pins. Enable A is this side and enable B is this side. So we're essentially taking control of motors by side and not by individual motors. And the reason for this is when turning around, let's say if the car wanted to turn right, then both the right wheels would turn off and only the left wheels would function. So essentially the car would move on its axis. Now let me show you what the code looks like for a basic motion. Okay. So this is a little sample code I wrote, and as you can see, I declared motor A, motor B, and these were the pin numbers I was talking about. This is the enable A, and this is the enable B. I labeled them as 1 and 2, but you can do either. And these are the GPIO pins that correspond to the ESP32 on the car. And then here, it's basically just setting up the PWM properties. And then this is where the setup starts. These are the output pins I was talking about, where each motor is plugged in. And then inside this loop, here's where the actual motor starts to spin. So our first command is to give both motors maximum speed. So essentially they'll be moving forward. And then this is for motor A and this is for motor B. And when I say motor A and B, I mean side A and side B. So motor A is controlling two motors on the same side, motor B is controlling two motors on the other side. And this is how the code ends. So the code basically, I'm just testing out different speeds. So maximum speed for both motors, maximum speed for one side, maximum speed for the other side, and finally stopping. And then this while loop right here is basically looping the code over and over again, just so it doesn't stop. Yes. So that was a basic overview of the code and the chassis kit. And this was my first milestone. And yeah, I'm really excited to continue this project. Thank you very much for listening.